Okay, we're learning as a schus for Shlema Filan Chai Baserach. We are on Daf Lamed Daled Amid Beis. All right? Yeah, by the two dots. Ugvinas Beis Unaiki. The Mishnah had said that that you can't use this particular type of gvina from these Avdei Kechavim. Amr of Shem ben Lakish. Nema Asur Gvina Sunaiki. Why is this particular gvina Asur? And we had said a machlekes. There was a machlekes in the Mishnah back on Daf Chav Tes, or in Beis, about whether, according to a mayor, we had said this was together with Murius, which was also had mixed in some Isser. Murius Gvinas based in Aiki Shalav Tikham Asurim Visurin Isser Hana, Divrei Meir. Meir says a regular Gvina, as we're going to see, Avoid the Kechavim is only Aser Ba'achila. Meir says, in addition to being Aser Ba'achila, it's also Aser Ba'hana. Chamar Meini Sur Isser Hana. Cham say no, it's just like we're other Gvina Avoid the Kechavim. So
So we're back to?
we're on Daf Lamed Daled Amid Beis by the two dots. We just start. Why is it that this particular gvina, their gvina is atzur, and according to Meir, it's even atzur b'hanav? Because in that particular city, most of the calves were used for avodah Zara. It was a very religious idol worshiper town, and they used most of their calves. Roiva them were used for avodas kechavim. Zakt Gemara, ma'ir roiva mafilu miyanami. The Gemara asks, why does it have to be that most of the calves are used, even if it's just less than half, or even if it's 25%? We know that Ramey is chayish for a miyat that we learned together this all the way back in Yavamas, that he said Gabi we say a cotton and a ktana. A cotton that had a isha be neifel liyibim to him, or a ktana that was neifel liyibim. You can't be chayletz, it can't be miyabim, because maybe it's a cotton, maybe it'll be a sris, and the ktana maybe it'll be an islandess, even though it's usually certainly not roiv, that's a small miyat, but we're chayish that maybe that will turn out to be the case when they become gedolim, and then the yibum will have turned out to be with someone whom you can't be miyabim. So therefore, the Gemara, Reb Meir says, nevertheless, Reb Meir says, since there's a miyat, we have to be chayish for it. So too over here, we're talking about Reb Meir shita. Reb Meir says that this gvina of Beis Unaiki is also bahana. Why does it have to be that it's a roiv agalim? That the miyat be enough. So Gemara, I amrit roiv Ika miyat. Ika. Ika miyat. El I amrit miyat, if you'll say a roiv, then you have at least a miyat. Meaning to say, if this is a roiv, if it's a roiv of the agalim, roiv of the calves, so that will be that the calves, which are a miyat of the animals altogether, from which one can get the rennet that will make the which will be, not the rennet that's used will be from Avdei Avodah Zara, and therefore will passel the gvina. So then it comes out you have a miyat. Eliyamet miyat, kivin the karoiv agalim the einish chatam lavodas kacham vekanami shar behemis the einish chatam lavodas kacham havel miyuta de loy chayish. I should have reminded again the way it works with cheese. The way cheese is made is they would take the from the keva, which is what touched as the maw, one of the four stomachs of a cow. They would take the contents of that stomach, which was very acidic, and use that to as a catalyst to cause the cheese to curdle, take the milk and turn it into cheese. So we were concerned that in this city they were using the calves of the contents of the more of the calves that were roiv made for avodah zarah. So we're saying even though Reb Meir holds a chayish from miyuta, but the calf it doesn't have to be from a calf. It could be from a different animal. It could be from a sheep. It could be from a older cow. So therefore, we say since if it wasn't a roiv of the calves, it was just a miyat, then we would say it's a miyat de miyuta. It means it's a miyat of the calves, and the calves are a miyat of all the animals. So therefore, we would say even Rameir would not be chayish for a miyat de miyuta. That's why it had to be that roiv calves are used for avodah zarah, and that's the reason why Rameir says it would not just be asa ba'achila like other gvina for the reasons we're going to say later, but it would also be asa ba'na because of the chashash of avodah zarah that it came from an animal that's used for avodah zarah. And you should just it's important also to remember when we talk about a miyat de miyuta, in our minds we translate that into a small chance, but it's actually it's technically a miyuta does not necessarily mean a bigger chance or a less chance. It's two separate chances. It's two separate cheshbainis. And even though Rameya says he's chayish for a miyut could be 49%, or a miyut could be 5%, or Rameya would be chayish, or maybe that's karav levadi, but let's say 10% Rameya would be chayish for. But even though the two miyutim together, if you have a 10%, if you have one is 49% and the other one is 49%, so it comes out to be, basically a 24% chance, that would still, according to the mayor, not be a miyut that you're chayish for. So it doesn't come out to the percentage. It depends on how many miyutim there are. Zok the Gemara. Amr Rav Shimon ben Bar Al Yakum Rav Shimon ben Lakish. What does it make a difference that the moors of that these agalim were brought for avodah zarah? For atu the shari, you hold this mutter itma hashaychles behemel lizruk damel avodah kechavim lahakter chavel avodah chavim v'echana masura. If someone shechted a behemel, and his intention is to bring it to take the dam and be zayrik it, similar to the way we do our avodah. He wanted to do the same avodah. He wanted to be zayrik the dam on his beach, lekavod his avodah zara, or to bring the chaylev, the fats, and burn them for the avodah kechavim. But in the meantime, he's just shechting the animal. So Rabbi Yechid Amasura, he holds mechash me avodah l'avodah. He says that when you intend to when you have in mind that you're going to, when he shechs it and he has in mind to later do an avodah with it, that's considered to be avodah zarah already. Just like we find legabi our karbanos lahavdil, that if you have a machshava when you're doing the shechita, it could be considered pigel based on your machshava during the shechita. So too by the avodah zarah also, if a person's machshava when he shechts, he's not currently doing avodah zarah, but his intention is to later do something with the product of that shechita. That shechita itself makes the animal into something that was used for avodah zarah, even if you never get around to actually being zayrik the dam. But Rabbi Shimon Lakish says no. In the meantime, all that you did was shechting. You shechted an animal the same way you'd shecht an animal, the same way the guy would shecht an animal to use it to eat it. So he also he just shechted this animal now, even though he has intention later on to do something that he shouldn't do. In the meantime, he hasn't done it yet. It means there's no piggle on avodah zarah. It's not a carbon. So you haven't done anything yet. So the Gemara is asking, why are we saying over here when you shecht an animal, if we're saying roiv animals are shechted for avodah zarah. So, but they're not going to do anything with the rennet inside the maw of the behemoth. They're going to do other things with other parts. So that when they separate that rennet, even though it's something that's eventually going to be used for avodah zarah, right now it was geschachten stam. And according to Rav Shimon Lakish, that doesn't make it avodah zarah. Amalei tamincha she'aischa, which Rashi teaches as good luck to you in the future. Where's Rashi? Yor mazalecha. I'm wishing you luck. That you'll have good luck, but this one you miss. You're striking out on. But I'm who avoida. We're talking about where he shechs it, and he intends that the shechit itself, that should be the avodah. We're talking about someone who is so that certainly not everyone would agree that if he's being oived avodah zara by the shechita, if that's his intention, he's not waiting for later that it's an avodah zara, and that's what they did in this unaiki. They would shach most of the calves would be geshachted, and it's when they shachted them. We even had an example of this before, by the way. I guess not with shechting, but we had with the we saw those animals that they would, if you found with a round hole in the hide, that was a raya that it was killed as an animal sacrifice. Certainly over there, the act of taking out the heart, which killed it, was the Avoda. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda. Shal Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, now we're going to have to go back a little bit to the Mishnah because we're going to go into the details of which was we learned it quite a while ago. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shal Rabbi Yishmael is Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yishmael asked Rabbi Yeshua, Kshayu mahalchem ederach, as they were going. Amal Malay. So he asked him this question. Why is the cheese of Avdei Kechavim asur? Amalei, because, like we described earlier, they would use the rennet, the acidic contents of one of the stomachs of a cow, or whatever animal it was. They would use that to create cheese from milk, to curdle the milk and make it into cheese. And they would use from an avela. They would use from an animal. The goyim don't shech their animals, so it's treifa. It's nevela. And nevela is also amaloi. He said to him, you're worried about the keva of an avela, and you're saying it's part of the animal. This content of the more is part of the animal and should be treated as nevela, just like the steaks of the animal. This stomach content is also nevela. But what about when someone shechs an animal? When you shecht an animal as an oila, you're not allowed to use anything. That is all usher. If anyone has any hana from an oila, it's the mechayiv in mi'ila, which is more than an avela. In avela, there's no isser mi'ila. There's no isser mi'ila. There's not even isser hana on avela. You could feed an avela to your dogs. So the isser of eating something from an avela is less than the isser of eating something or having nana from an oila. And nevertheless, we said, Amru, Kain Shadaita Yafa Sarfachai. A Kain doesn't get turned off, it doesn't bother him, he could eat this contents, this rennet, from an animal raw, from an oila. You could take that rennet and eat it. They were not masking to them that you could eat it. They said, not only shouldn't you eat it, you shouldn't be nana from it, but it's not mila, meaning it's only a takanas chachamim that one should not be nana from it, but midaraisa, it's not considered part of the animal, and therefore there's no isser mi'ila. So even though we've walked back a little bit of the isser on it, but it's on Chavtes Amid Beis, the Mishnah. So aval amru einan v'loy mailin. They said that you still can't. There's still no isser mi'ila. Masha ein came by nevela. There is an isser deraisa that it's not allowed to be eaten. So, but l'chayr, for the fact that there's no mi'ila on it, we see that the rennet is not considered part of the cow, part of the animal, part of the oila. So therefore, it should also not be considered part of the nevela that you should be chayiv for the gvina that was made with it. Amaloi. So he said to him, no, there's a different reason. Because, like we said by the base of Nike, they would make it with a calf of avodas kechavim that was used for avodah zara. Amaloi came lamalei asura b'hana. We know that avodah zara is also b'hana, and this is considered part of the animal, and now being used to make the cheese, the cheese should be asabana, not just ba'achila. Therefore, he didn't want to continue this conversation. He's pursuing him too much about the reasons. The Gemara is going to explain later on. Today, we're going to see that he didn't want to go into the reasons because that would, if during the first 12 months, you don't discuss the reasons of a takana. Amallah Yishmal, Ha'echata Kaireya, Kitayvim Daidecha Miyayin. How do you answer this pasuk of Kitayvim Daidecha Yam, Oy Kitayvim Daidayich? Does it refer to the Rebbeinu Shalom, or does it refer to the Klal Yisrael that they are better than yayin? They're more beloved than wine. Amalai Kitayvim Daidecha. It's a reference to Rebbeinu Shalom. Amalai Eina Davar Kein. Shavar Chaverim Alav Alav L'Reach Shemenecha Tayvim. I'm sorry. He said Daidayich. He said it's a reference to Klal Yisrael. He said no. L'Reach Shemenecha Tayvim. That's a reference of Lashon Zachar. And that is again a reference to Rebbeinu Shalom, so therefore you're incorrect. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our Gemara. Amar Yishol Rabbi Shmuel. Amar Rav Devoy Amar Rav. Hamakadosh beperish shar hanishko. Mekudeshes. Someone who's mekadosh an isha using the wastes that were found inside of a shar haniskal. A shar haniskal is asa bahana, and they killed a shar. Or it was, even if it wasn't killed yet, it was sentenced to be niskal. And they took the waste out of it. Someone took a waste out of it, and some woman, for some reason, it was worth a shava pruta. I guess it was fertilizer. So he took a shekel's worth, a pruta's worth of fertilizer from this animal that was sentenced to death and was asab hana. And he's mekadosh nisha, it's mekudeshes. Beferish iglei avedz kechavim ain't mekudeshes. But if you use this waste from an agala nut that was shar niskal, that's asabana, but aves kechavim, which is also asabana, it's not mekudeshes. What's the reason? What's the reason for the chiluk? They're both asabana. So the Gemara, ibay seima svara, ibay seima kra. I can tell you a svara to explain. I can tell you a pasuk. Ibay seima svara, gabe igle aves kechavim nichale benafchel. A person who brings a animal as a for avodah zara, he's being makrovit. The bigger the animal, the more covet he gets. So he wants the animal to be as big as possible. So even the waste inside the animal contributes to the size of the animal. So he's benefiting. He's happy that the waste is there. Therefore, that's part of the avodah zara, and therefore it's asabana. It's not considered to be a discrete object that's not part of the animal because it's also being nevad essentially. He doesn't care that the shar niskal is bigger. It's not relevant what he thinks about it. The isra no is on that animal, and this is considered. You go back, you revert to the general rule that this is a discrete object that's not considered to be part of the animal. So therefore, it won't be included in the isra no. So that would be the svara. Ibay say makror, I could say it's from a pasuk siv hacha leyidvak biyadcha me'uma minacherim. It says legabe the iser of being nana from avodas kechavim. It says it shouldn't be attached to you anything in your hand, anything me'uma, anything at all from what's aser, from what's been separated avodah zara. So me'uma tells you anything at all. It includes even the waste that's inside the animal. Because if hasam sakal yiskal hashar lo yochel es psari, you have to kill the shar and you shouldn't eat its basar. Psari asa hapir shoy muteres. The Torah that's where the isser hana comes from. Even though it says lo yochel, if you remember, we said the achil over here is the isser hana, and it says basar. So only the basar is asar as opposed to the waste. Amarava, and this is now we're getting back to our Mishnah. Travayu tanoi. Both of these things, both the Isser Hana that includes the waste by Avodas Kechavim, as well as the heter of Nevela or Shar Nisko, both of these can be seen in our Mishnah. From the fact that Rabbi Yeshua had originally said the reason for the Isser of Gevina is because it's created from the rennet of an avela. He wanted to say it's from an avela. And he said, no, a oila is worse than an avela. And even so, the oila, it's not aser bahana midaraisa. So you see, we use that as a raya that the keva is considered discrete. It's separate from the animal. Otherwise, why wouldn't it be aser with isser oila? So elamai, it's separate. So let's say the same thing over here by the avela, that it's also separate and it shouldn't be aser. L'chaldi surah no sharu. Sharu Prishai. That shows you Lagabe things that are just Asa Bahana, though the separate parts of it, whether it's waste or whether it's the rennet, those are not included in that Issa.
Even though it is,
Even though what?
the cave of an Isla is, and the cave of
We
an
said there's
Avela,
a Takanas Chachamim that
yeah,
asas it, but it's not Asa b'Me'ila. Why would it not be Me'ila? It must be, it's not included in the Isser. It's the Gemara, the Svar is a little it's the way it's phrased is a little misleading, because the fact that Oila is more Chamer is just the predicate for us to be able to say that's a raya that over here it should really be Me'ila using the waste. The fact that there's no, or in that case we're talking about the cave.
right.
So from the fact that there's no Me'ila, Vaistais, it's separate. And then there's the Takanas Chachamim, that's a different cheshbon. But what we're talking about over here is whether the cave is part of the animal or not. Once we've said that it's not part of the animal, how can you say that the Isser Nevela is going to answer it bahana? So that's the first thing. From the fact that he said, so Rabbi Shmuel said, so the reason is the problem really is not because of nevela, but because of oivdik avekechamugahadale, imkem lamana asrua ba'ana. And he said, if that's the case, if you're saying that we're talking about avekechavim, and therefore it should also be asa ba'ana, like we said, because it's menafech, it causes it to be bigger, so you're actually also being oivid it. Mechlal da avekechavim also prashai. So you see this rule that legabe avodah the what even the waste, like we said, because that's also included in part of the avodah. You want that extra heft to the animal to be there because you're making a bigger dedication, a bigger sacrifice. Correct the Gemara. Why didn't Rabbi Yeshua, when Rabbi Shmuel asked him his question, that he said that it can't be because of nevela, because nevela it's not going to be also because it's a separate part of the animal. It's not part of the animal. Let's let him say. So he had asked him if it's going to be that he said that it should be Rabbi Shmuel had said if it was going to be aser because of avodas kechavim, so Rabbi Shmuel answered him back to Yeshua after he said avela. So he said that because of avodas kechavim, Yishmael asked him, but if that's the case, it should also be aser ba'ana. So and Yeshua didn't have an answer for that. Why didn't he answer lahadalei mishum the lesser surah ba'ana? Because the iser this rennet, it's not actually becoming part of the cheese. It's just a catalyst that causes the cheese to curdle, but it's not there actually. The murius, because we find the gabi murius, which is that fish soup or whatever it is. The rabbanon, the lo yasru bahana. We had a machlokes in the Mishnah. Rab Meir said it's asabanan. The rabbanon say it's not asabanan. My time, but why do they say it's not asabanan? Even though there's some of this avodah zara fish in it. Lamishum the less ilisur bana. Is it not because the what they used? I'm sorry, they used to put a little bit of wine into this murius, and we said that the murius was would become bottle in it, and you couldn't find that there was no there's no tam left of that murius of the yayin nesach. So why don't we say that same tam over here? That's the reason why it's no Isser Hana. Amri hacha kivin de okma kamoikim chashav le command isli surbana. Says it's different. When they put the wine into the murius, the reason why they were doing it is because they wanted to save money. They were just using it to dilute. They would take some cheap wine and they'd have more murius by adding it in, but it was just filler. It didn't provide any taste. It didn't do anything to the murius. But over here, this rennet of avodas kechavim is the catalyst. That's what's causing the milk to turn into cheese. There's a very chashuv part in it. So you can't say this svara of lesa be'ena, which explains why the chachamim said by the murius that it's not going to be asabah. No, that would not apply over here because obviously the keva is very important in the production of the cheese. So the Gemara says, "Hisiyu l'davaracha." From this back and forth between Yeshua and Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yeshua kept on trying to give suggestions about what the Isser Gvina came from, and Rabbi Yishmael knocked them down. And then Rabbi Yishmael wouldn't give Rabbi Yishmael an answer about what the reason was. So Rabbi Yeshua just said, let's talk about something else. I'm going to bring up this pasuk. What does that mean? The meaning of it is, and this is a little bit of a reference to what the discussion between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yishmael. It says the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Rebbeinu Shalom says that. Actually, it's the Bnei Yisrael say that the words of the Rebbe Malai Divrei Doidecha, meaning Klal Yisrael, your beloved, which is Klal Yisrael, Yosem Yene Shel Torah, even more than the Torah itself, meaning that the words of the Takanas Chachamim are even more geschmack than Torah Shebiksav. This is part of Rabbi Yeshua. He wanted to discuss this pasuk to tell him about the importance of Takanas Chacham, that we have even more hana from the Torah Shebal Peh than we have from the Torah Shebiksav. Zok Gemara, Maishna Haikra the Shaila. Why did he ask him specifically about this pasuk? Even though we had this reference to the importance of Takanas Chachamim, but the Gemara wanted a more concrete explanation. He wanted to point out to him the beginning of the pasuk. He said that the pasuk says he will basically kiss him with his mouth. But we darshan amalei yishmal achi chashoik sveisecha zu bezu. Yashkeni, we darshan it to mean put your lips together. V'al tevo lahashiv, and don't be quick to answer. Meaning, don't be so eager to tell me, to try to get from me the reason for this takana of Gvina. My time, or what's the big problem with saying what the takana of Gvina Savis Kecham is? Amarula v'tem Rishmu Barabba Gzeir Chadoshi. It's a brand new Gzeir ve'em efakbikamba, and you can't question it. My Gzeirasa. What's the problem? Amar Shem Ben Pazi, Amar Shem Lakus Mishum Nika. He says the reason is because we're worried about a snake's venom getting into the milk. The Avdei Kechav were not so careful about covering over their milk, and therefore it could sometimes get poison in it. What's the problem? Let him just say that. When they would make Gzeir in Eretz Yisrael, they wouldn't say the reason for 12 months. For 12 months, because maybe some will disagree, and then they'll come. If it's a new takana, people won't accept it. They'll argue about the reasons. But once it's already in place, then everyone accepts it. Megadav Dor Yomia El Miyata. He asked, but getting back to the reason, you said the reason is because of poison. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked El Miyata Yavsha Tishtri Yashin Tishtri, like we had earlier, that something that is dried out or something that is old, we should be mutter, because the poison stops, it retards the development of like we said, wine to become chametz, or in this case, for milk to become cheese. It doesn't work on something that has it doesn't become dried out, and it doesn't become like the seasoned cheese if it has the poison in it. Yavish mutter, yashin mutter, yashin. You have um, if you have wine or cheese that became old, it became old or became dry, it's a raya that there's no it's mutter from the chash of giloi, because it wouldn't have happened if there was a poison in it. So we give up on that pshat. The Gemara moves on to a different explanation for why gvina is aser. Because it's not possible to not have a little bit of chalav. So Rashi said, there's some milk left even after it turns into cheese. Then you saw royehu aser, and that might be chalav of avodah zara. Like not, I'm sorry, not of avodah zara. Like we're going to see later on, this is chalav akum that is aser. So this will be some leftover gayish cheese. Because we're always worried maybe the guy mixed in chalav, the milk of a behemoth. The chalav tameh ain't aimid. And even though chalav tameh does not become cheese, that's why cheese we don't have the chashash of be'etzem of chalav akum. The of tameh b'tar tameh nisher and misyuvi the chalva hatar shekarim mishka. Whenever you make cheese, there's a little bit of whey that's left over from after the milk curdled. So this chalav tameh that wasn't able to become cheese because not chalav tameh doesn't turn into cheese, that will be mixed in with a little bit of whey on the side of the cheese. That's Rashi's pshat. But Taisus has a big problem with this, and he says an entirely different pshat, that he says that we're going back to the pshat that is because of it still has the nikur, that it still has some from the snake, that it was megullah. He says that, so even though we said that yavish should be mutter, he says it's not. There's no such thing as yavish. There's always a little bit of whey, so that part there could always be a little bit of the snake venom in it. So that's the second pshat. Shmuel Amar. So we had nikur, and we have because of So we have nikur, and now we have also because of a little bit of milk left in the gvina. Shmuel Amnei Shemidnoi say ba'ar keves nevela. Shmuel says a third pshat, because they don't use the rennet inside of the maw of the animal. They use the maw itself, which is actually a part of the animal. That's one of the stomachs of the animal. So that's an nevela. In fact, Zak the Gemara, Hagekeva Gufa Sharyat. So if you're saying that the problem is because of the meat of it, then let's do this tomorrow. It's getting late, and my wife, I think, needs to talk to me. Okay, have a good day.